Connor and Madison barely know him anyway. My name is Carter Reynolds. I'm 42 and I run Reynolds Security Solutions. 8 years married, and my wife Rebecca just told Ethan Morrison, a man I trusted, that line about my kids. I heard it all through the surveillance I installed. They were in room 2847 at the Ritz-Carlton downtown. Rebecca had on a $15,000 diamond bracelet I never bought. Ethan paid for it with $23,000 he took from our joint account. Rebecca laughed as she said my children barely knew me. Ethan replied, after the divorce, they'll see that Daddy was never really there. In 2013, I left the Army after a dozen years in military intelligence and started Reynolds Security with $50,000 and a laptop. We do corporate security consulting, protecting data, executives, and trade secrets. Companies pay well for someone who thinks like the bad guys. I met Rebecca Walsh at a charity dinner for Chicago Children's Hospital. She was 28, I was 34. She developed luxury downtown condos. Gorgeous, auburn-haired, utterly confident. Rebecca grew up wealthy. Dad, Robert Walsh, is a U.S. Senator. Mom, Patricia Walsh, is a federal judge. They lived in a $3 million Lincoln Park house and sent Rebecca to private schools her whole life. She expected the finest things. Our first date cost me $300 at Alinea, Chicago's top restaurant. Rebecca ordered the most expensive wine without checking the price. Should have been a hint. We moved fast. 6 months in, she was at my apartment most nights. A year later, I proposed with a 3-carat ring costing $18,000, 2 months' salary then. The wedding was everything she wanted. 200 guests at the Palmer House, open bar, 7 courses. I paid the $85,000 bill. The first few years felt like a jackpot. Business was growing quickly. Rebecca earned well selling high-end condos. We bought a 4-bedroom Lincoln Park house for $1.2 million. 2 BMWs sat in the driveway. We took Europe trips twice a year. Rebecca loved the lifestyle my success allowed. Designer shopping sprees at Nordstrom that ran $3,000. First-class flights, dinners where entrees hit $60. She would tell friends how successful her husband was. By 2016, Reynolds Security had 12 employees and major contracts. Rebecca said she wanted kids. Connor was born March 15, 2016 at 3:22 a.m., 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Crying loud enough, nurses heard next door. Madison arrived 12 minutes later. They changed everything for me. I started working longer hours, taking larger clients, pushing harder than during my Army days. Every contract and late night was for their future. Rebecca appeared supportive, bringing coffee when I worked late, massaging my shoulders when cases stressed me, bragging to other moms about how hard I worked for our family. In 2018, things shifted. Rebecca began taking phone calls that stopped when I entered a room. She attended social events without me, gallery openings, charity dinners, industry parties. When I asked why I wasn't invited, she said, "You're always too busy with work anyway." That's when Ethan Morrison showed up. Rebecca introduced Ethan as a business partner. He was 35, divorced, no kids, black BMW M5, suits that likely cost $2,000. He had an effortless charm that made people listen. Rebecca said Ethan had the commercial real estate contacts she needed for expansion. She spent hours at his office planning a downtown project and came home calling him brilliant. I liked Ethan. A stupid mistake. He came to dinner every few weeks, brought expensive wine and presents for Connor and Madison. The kids adored him. After dinner, Ethan and I would sit with whiskey and talk sports, politics, and business. He asked sharp questions about corporate security and praised military service. I thought I'd found a friend. I didn't realize those conversations were intelligence collection. Every question about my business was research on how to dismantle it. Every compliment was a way to learn my weaknesses and exploit my trust. By 2019, Rebecca's attitude toward me had flipped. Everything I did irritated her. The way I loaded the dishwasher, the hours I worked, how I disciplined the kids. Arguments erupted from nowhere. During fights, she'd say, "Children need their father present." Or money isn't everything, Carter.
Family should come first.
The irony stung. I worked 70-hour weeks for them. Every contract and late night was so Rebecca and the kids could live in our house. The twins could attend Chicago's best private school, and Rebecca could keep her accustomed lifestyle. Yet she never suggested we cut expenses. Designer clothes, luxury vacations in Tuscany and the French Riviera, $200 wine bottles. Still wanted it all. Ethan became a fixture. He showed up with coffee on Saturday mornings, attended Connor's soccer games and Madison's recitals, helped with bedtime and read stories in silly voices. I told Ethan things I shouldn't have, details about top clients, which companies feared breaches, which executives needed protection, and our family finances, savings, investment accounts, life insurance. I thought I was confiding in a friend. I was handing intelligence to someone plotting to ruin me. The breaking point came in February 2020. I'd just returned from a week-long Seattle job, responding to a tech company data breach. The client paid $75,000 for 7 days' work. I was exhausted and looking forward to family time. Instead, I walked into a house full of strangers. Rebecca barely looked up from her laptop and said, "Oh, you're back," like I was the mailman. Connor and Madison, who normally screamed "Daddy's home" after trips, seemed shy. When I asked what was wrong, Rebecca said, "They're not used to you being here anymore. You've become a stranger in your own home." That hit like a punch. That night, lying beside a woman who felt more distant than in our early days, I decided to find out what was going on and fix it. The investigation began small. 12 years in military intelligence teaches you not to jump. Gather data, analyze patterns, build a full picture. I started with Rebecca's MacBook Pro. She left it open in the kitchen while she dressed in the mornings for about 10 minutes. Most people don't get deleted files. Deleting marks space as available, but until new data overwrites it, the old data remains. Rebecca cleared her browser history and emptied the trash, but didn't know about shadow files or cache recovery. It took 3 hours and 17 minutes to reconstruct her digital life for the past 8 months. What I found made me sick. The romance began June 2019. Texts that started as business quickly turned personal. By July, they were meeting for lunches that lasted 3 hours. In August, Rebecca sent Ethan photos, lingerie I'd bought her, taken in our bedroom while I traveled. But the affair was just the surface. Beneath it was a detailed plan to dismantle my life. Rebecca and Ethan had been plotting for months. Their strategy was sophisticated and aimed at every part of my existence. They planned to claim I used security equipment illegally to spy on competitors. Ruin my professional reputation and trigger lawsuits to bankrupt Reynolds Security. They'd argue I was psychologically unstable, obsessed with surveillance and control, potentially dangerous to the family. Rebecca's mother, Judge Patricia Walsh, would help secure custody in their favor. Her father, Senator Robert Walsh, had the connections to blacklist me from contracts. The most damaging document I found was a draft custody petition Rebecca had worked on with divorce attorney Lawrence Sterling. It painted me as an emotionally distant workaholic who abandoned family responsibilities for money, claimed the children feared my unpredictable behavior and need for control, and suggested I might be dangerous because of my military background and access to surveillance gear. Every line was crafted to destroy me and seem believable to judges who didn't know me. They spent months building a case to take everything I'd worked for. The files referenced a sealed 2011 court case involving the Walsh family, something about a traffic accident handled quietly through family influence. At that point, I realized I wasn't just defending. I had to go on offense. The next phase used the intelligence skills I'd hoped never to use against people I loved. I began systematic surveillance of Rebecca and Ethan, documenting movements, communications, and finances. Installing surveillance in my own home felt surreal but necessary. I used company gear, Tiny cameras concealed in smoke detectors and picture frames, audio devices smaller than quarters in Rebecca's purse and car, and a GPS tracker on the $15,000 bracelet Ethan had given her. 2 weeks later, I had what I needed. High-definition video showed Rebecca and Ethan in hotel rooms at the Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, and Peninsula. Audio recordings captured them discussing how to wreck me, the lies they'd tell in court, and how they'd split my assets. The prize was Ethan's phone. Like many criminals, he'd let arrogance defeat good security. His password was his birthday, February 14th. Should have been a hint. Once inside his device, I saw the full scale of their financial plan. Ethan had opened 3 offshore accounts, 2 in the Cayman Islands and 1 in Switzerland, and had been moving money from the investment account he shared with Rebecca. He planned to vanish once the divorce was final, and Rebecca had claimed half my assets. In the past 6 months, he'd moved $340,000 offshore. Funds from our joint investments, Rebecca's business profits, even a loan he'd taken, using our house as collateral without telling me. He'd also booked a one-way, first-class ticket to Monaco for March 15th, exactly 2 weeks after Rebecca planned to file papers. The plan was clear: let Rebecca destroy me in court, claim half, and then Ethan disappears with the stolen nest egg while she stayed behind as the wounded ex-wife. This wasn't just betrayal, it was organized theft on a large scale. My investigation into the Walsh family's buried secrets took 3 weeks and became the most valuable intelligence I'd ever gathered. The sealed 2011 case involved Rebecca's younger brother, Timothy Walsh, who killed an entire family while driving drunk. The victims were Maria Rodriguez, 34, a nurse at Children's Memorial Hospital, her husband, Carlos, 36, a construction worker, and their daughters Isabella, 8, and Sophia, 5. They were returning from Sophia's Chuck E. Cheese birthday party when Timothy, drunk and driving his father's Mercedes at 70 miles per hour in a 35 miles per hour zone, ran a red light and hit their Honda Civic. All 4 Rodriguez family members died instantly. Timothy walked away with a bruised rib. Judge Patricia Walsh ensured her son faced no real consequences. Evidence was suppressed. Witnesses were intimidated into changing statements. And the prosecutor took a plea deal that sent Timothy to private rehab for 6 months instead of prison for vehicular manslaughter. Senator Robert Walsh made strategic campaign contributions, $150,000, to the district attorney's re-election fund, which helped secure his son's freedom. For 12 years, the Rodriguez family's extended relatives fought for justice, but every lawyer they consulted said the evidence was sealed and the Walsh family's influence made the case hopeless. I spent 3 weeks verifying every detail, cross-referencing court documents with financial records, tracking witnesses who had been paid to stay silent, and assembled ironclad proof that the Walsh family had corrupted the justice system to protect their son. Now I had leverage that could ruin them all. First, I let Rebecca and Ethan make their moves. I wanted to see exactly how far they'd go. The call came on a Tuesday morning in early March. Lawrence Sterling, Rebecca's attorney, sounded smug. "Mr. Reynolds, it would be in everyone's best interest if we met to discuss your wife's petition. Some matters are better handled privately than in public litigation." His office was on the 47th floor of the Willis Tower. Mahogany furniture, leather law books, walls full of awards for aggressive family law work. The guy made a living taking husbands apart. He sat behind a massive desk like a king and slid a thick folder across the polished surface. "These are Mrs. Reynolds' terms. Sign these and avoid a courtroom fight you're bound to lose." I opened the folder and read the demands. Rebecca wanted full custody of Connor and Madison, with me relegated to supervised visitation 1 weekend a month. She wanted our house, both BMWs, and 60% of Reynolds' security, roughly $1.4 million. Alimony, $8,000 a month for the next 15 years. Sterling leaned back, enjoying the assumed shock. Mrs. Reynolds has substantial evidence of your inappropriate behavior, he said. Obsession with surveillance, emotional absence from the kids, use of military-style interrogation techniques in business, suggesting psychological instability. He paused for effect. Judge Patricia Walsh has reviewed preliminary evidence and will likely view Mrs. Reynolds' petition favorably. Judge Walsh, Rebecca's mother, was a respected federal jurist whose preliminary take, he argued, would carry weight. I closed the folder, watched him for a long moment, then reached into my briefcase and placed a manila envelope on his desk. "Give this to your client," I said. "Tell her to read carefully before deciding how aggressive she wants to be." Sterling, unused to being dismissed like that, frowned. "What is this?" he asked. "Just deliver it, Lawrence. You might want to find a new client." The envelope contained everything. High-res photos of Rebecca and Ethan in hotel rooms. Printed text messages outlining their plans. Bank statements proving money taken from our accounts. Records of Ethan's offshore transfers. And most important, the investigative file on the Rodriguez case with new evidence that could finally bring Timothy Walsh to justice and ruin the Walsh family's public image. 6 hours later, Rebecca called, voice shaking with a mix of fury and fear. "Carter, we need to talk, now." I said no. Everything she needed to know was in the envelope. She warned me about her family's connections and the damage they could inflict. I told her she had secrets. Dark, ugly ones they'd protected for 12 years, and now I had them. "You're bluffing," she said. "Am I? Ask your mother about Maria Rodriguez, Carlos, Isabella, and Sofia. Ask how much it cost your father to keep Timothy out of prison." Silence, then a whisper. "What do you want?" I said, "Justice." I told her to withdraw the divorce petition, sign an agreement giving me full custody. Have Ethan return every stolen penny and disappear, and have her mother resign from the bench before I took this to the FBI and the media. Rebecca cried, "You're asking us to destroy our lives." I answered that she'd tried to destroy mine first, and everything I had was true. An hour later, Ethan called, furious. "You sick bastard, you spied on us. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of freak you are." I told him to go ahead and tell people about the $340,000 he'd moved offshore, the accounts, the Monaco ticket, which would only prove his guilt. "You can't prove anything," he said. I replied that I could. Bank records, flight confirmations, hotel receipts, documentation of every crime from the past year. The choice was prosecution in Chicago or a life running from federal investigators. Then the call I'd been waiting for, Judge Patricia Walsh. Our usual commanding tone had become small. "What exactly do you want, Carter?" she asked. I repeated my terms. Justice for the Rodriguez family, consequences for her son, and that her family be kept out of my life. She said I was asking her to destroy her career and reputation. I reminded her she'd helped her son avoid consequences 12 years earlier, and that if we didn't agree, Maria and Carlos and Isabella and Sofia would finally get the justice they deserved. I hung up without waiting. What I hadn't expected was how desperate Ethan would become when he realized he was trapped. The next morning, Rebecca called at 6:47 a.m., sobbing. "Carter, Ethan's gone," she said. "He'd cleaned out every shared account and disappeared, taken all the money for a new business, left her with nothing." Surveillance confirmed Ethan's car was gone from the apartment garage and his phone was off. A call to an American Airlines contact showed Ethan had booked an emergency flight to Paris, departing 11:30 p.m. the previous night. He'd panicked and run, leaving Rebecca to face the fallout. "Please, Carter," Rebecca begged through tears. "I made terrible mistakes. We can fix this. Go back to how things were." I told her no. She had chosen to destroy our family, and she would live with the consequences. I contacted an FBI friend from my Army days, Jake Murphy, who handled financial crimes in the Chicago field office. I provided details on Ethan's offshore accounts, the thefts, and the flight to France. Within 6 hours, a federal court order froze Ethan's assets. Within 12 hours, his name was on Interpol's watch list. 18 hours after that, he was arrested at Charles de Gaulle, trying to board a connecting flight to Switzerland, a country with no U.S. extradition treaty. 2 weeks later, we met in Sterling's office one last time. Rebecca looked nothing like the confident woman I'd married. Designer clothes wrinkled, makeup smudged by tears, hands shaking over custody and asset papers spread on the table. "Just sign them, Rebecca," I said. She stared as if reading a death sentence and whispered, "Carter, please, think of Connor and Madison." I told her I was thinking of them, teaching that actions have consequences. She signed. She signed a custody agreement granting me full parental rights, accepted an asset division that left her $50,000 and personal items, and provided a formal written apology for misrepresenting my dedication to the family. The aftermath was swift. Judge Patricia Walsh resigned from the federal bench 3 days later, citing personal health issues. But everyone understood the real reason: to avoid federal prosecution for judicial corruption. The FBI reopened the Rodriguez case with the new evidence I'd supplied. Timothy Walsh was arrested at his father's home on charges including vehicular manslaughter, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. After 12 years of freedom, he finally faced consequences for killing 4 people. Senator Robert Walsh's political career collapsed when the cover-up surfaced. His 30-year influence evaporated in weeks. He announced he wouldn't seek re-election and quietly retired. Ethan Morrison was extradited from France 2 months later and charged with embezzlement, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Federal prosecutors offered a plea: 7 years in prison in exchange for returning the stolen funds and testifying against others. He took it. Rebecca lost everything that mattered to her: her reputation in Chicago's social circles, her real estate business when clients fled, and wealthy friends who stopped returning calls. She sold the BMW, jewelry, and designer clothes to cover legal bills topping $200,000. She eventually found work as a receptionist at a small Schaumburg real estate office, making about $32,000 a year, roughly what she used to spend monthly on handbags. The luxury life she'd expected was gone. Me? I got my children back. Connor and Madison live with me full-time. For the first time in years, the house feels like a home instead of a battlefield. They're 8 now, old enough to understand that sometimes adults make poor choices and families change. Business has never been stronger. Word spread through Chicago's corporate community about how I handled Rebecca and Ethan, and clients sought Reynolds Security because they knew I could guard them from internal and external threats. The company now has 28 employees and annual revenue of $4.2 million. More important, how I spend my time changed. Surveillance gear is gone from the house. Late-night work sessions were replaced with bedtime stories and Saturday morning chocolate chip pancakes. I coach Connor's Little League team, the Lincoln Park Lions, and help Madison with art projects. I'm present in a way I wasn't before because I understand what I nearly lost. 6 months after the divorce was final, on a warm summer evening, I sat in the backyard watching Connor and Madison run through sprinklers, laughing until they couldn't breathe. Their joy was pure and unaware of the war I'd fought to protect their childhood. I realized Rebecca had been right about one thing. I had chosen work over family too many times. Not anymore. Every decision I make now starts with one question: what's best for Connor and Madison? People ask if I regret how it ended, whether I wish I'd saved my marriage instead of destroying it. The answer is simple: you can't save something built on lies. Rebecca and Ethan thought they could manipulate me because they saw only a workaholic husband who didn't notice betrayal. They were wrong. Their choices cost them everything they wanted. My patience and preparation got me back what mattered. I didn't win through revenge or anger. I won through careful investigation, strategic thinking,
and the belief that truth beats lies.
Rebecca and Ethan ruined themselves with greed and stupidity. I just made sure they couldn't take my children with them. That's the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is making someone pay. Justice is protecting what matters and ensuring appropriate consequences. Kids laugh and play in the yard. My business protects good people from bad ones. Rebecca answers phones in the suburbs and is learning what consequences look like. Ethan counts days in a federal prison cell. Sometimes the good guys win. Sometimes patience and preparation beat arrogance and greed. Sometimes truth really is enough. If you liked this story, hit like and leave a comment. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now and hit the notification bell for more stories like this. Thanks for watching. See you next video.